Hey, welcome back. I'm Keith Barry.
I'm Alex Nizick.
And I'm Mike Quincy.
And we've got a little bit to talk about another electric Mercedes. It feels like we've had a lot of those
Quite a few.
Join our fleet lately, and some of them have the same names. We just bought a new EQE, and it's the newest sedan in the Mercedes lineup. It's kind of like an EQS, but smaller. And we bought the EQE 350 4MATIC sedan. 288 horsepower, all-wheel drive, range of 260 miles every time you plug it in. It has all the critical safety features standard. Alex, I'm wondering, I hear this name, EQE.
Yep.
Is it like an E-Class? Is it like, is it more of the QE part or the E part? Is it like an EQS? Is it like an E-Class?
Yeah. Kind of both in some ways. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you hear a lot of automakers making these lofty EV claims, right? Like, we're going all EV by X date.
I think Mercedes said 2030.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like no more internal combustion engines.
Right. But the reality is, at least today, a lot of these automakers are going down this parallel path, right, of having ICE vehicles or hybrids as well as EVs. And Mercedes is doing the same thing, but unlike something like maybe Hyundai or Kia, where they have these separate models, right? Like the Ioniq 5 is there's no gas-powered or hybrid Ioniq 5, a totally separate model. And that's in contrast to somebody like BMW or a company like BMW, where they're kind of making ICE versions and electric versions of the exact same car, right? Like the 7 Series.
Parallel universe.
Yeah, 100%. Mercedes is, despite the names, and it's somehow confusing, but also straightforward. So that's at the same time. They're kind of taking the separate approach, right? They're the EQE and the EQS. They're similar in a lot of ways to the S-Class and the E-Class, but they're totally different cars, as far as the structure underneath and the body on top, and of course the powertrain. So yeah, it is kind of like a smaller S-Class or a smaller EQS in a lot of ways, and it's similar to the E-Class in the sense that it follows this type of structure where the S-Class or the EQS is the big one, the EQE is kind of the middle one. We haven't seen an EQC sedan yet, but probably, right? If I had to guess, following that same S-Class, E-Class, C-Class type of structure, small, medium, and large.
But looking at this naming, patterns here, Mercedes is buying way too many E's. Like, can I buy a vowel? No, too many E's. That's enough.
Right.
It comes free on the final round.
With all these E's.
Yeah. And there's no G. It's for the SUV. They just say SUV. So you can say, I drive an EQE. Well, which one?
Right.
It can mean two totally different vehicles that are kind of the same vehicle.
Yeah, it's not like S-Class and GLS, right? Like those are kind of different names-ish. Not quite following that exact structure, but I mean, even though it is a smaller version of the EQS, I would say don't be fooled. This is still a huge vehicle that weighs a ton. Or a few. It weighs 5,400 pounds, which the EQS weighs 5,800 pounds. And it's a couple inches shorter in a few of the dimensions, but it's still it's a big car. Yeah. And that's in comparison to the E-Class, not the one that they just showed, but the regular one, or the previous model weighs 4,000 pounds. So it's a big, heavy car.
And does it still have that kind of low roof like the EQS?
Definitely. Yeah. And it compromises a lot of things, visibility and driving position, which I think we'll probably dive into those things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Those are on my notes as well.
You have some opinions on this car, right? And I know this one doesn't have the hyper screen like the EQS, at least not the one we bought. It doesn't have the surround screen, but it does have the kind of new generation of a pretty complex infotainment and controls from Mercedes, right?
Correct. These are screens and controls that we've seen in recently tested Mercedes models. And Alex, I'm just going to echo what you've already said about this, and both in person and in our digital logbook. But I mean, there's a huge learning curve that comes with these models. You don't just get in them and press go and you're off.
No, definitely not.
And some of the things that are particularly annoying is you've got a lot of, even without the hyper screen, the screen's still pretty big. And the texts and the fonts and the symbols can be really, really small too, and far away. And the location of some things are just so annoying. And not only from an electronic standpoint, a screen standpoint, but the disjointed seat controls. I mean, a lot of the seat controls on this car are right on the door, and they have a really weird kind of functionality to them.
Very
pushing
Mercedes.
and pulling and stuff like that.
Yeah, Mercedes tells you where all the controls are. They've always kind of had their own environment, but it's gone even like.
But this is how it's disjointed, because most of the seat controls are on the door, but the lumbar adjustment is on the seat itself, which is where usually we find normal seat controls. The seat heaters are also on the door, but they're removed from the rest of the climate controls, which are in the center screen.
I will say on the lumbar though, the EQS had it in the screen. So, I remember opening the door of the EQE for the first time and kind of laughing, seeing the little dial.
Being thankful for small favors that you don't have to go into a screen and wade through menus to adjust the seat.
They're playing, some engineer somewhere is playing hide the lumbar just to try, and I know Gabe Shenhar he likes to play that game.
And other frustrations with the controls is that there's a column mounted gear selector, kind of like you would think would be you're getting your windshield wipers going. And I'm not the only one among our testers that have inadvertently shifted this car out of drive.
Every time I drive a Mercedes for the first time in the rain, I do that. And they've been using the column shifter like that for years. And I've been doing that for a decade. The first time I get into it, it's starting to rain. How come I'm in neutral?
And my final rant about the controls is the touch capacitive sliding controls on the steering wheel.
Oh gosh.
You need them for the audio volume, the cruise control. The button has to be slid, not pressed, to the top and the bottom, and if you push it too hard, you mute all the sound, and it never does anything exactly what I want. And my call out, my plea to Mercedes and every other car company is, when you have a control that drivers are constantly fiddling with, probably the volume on whatever you're listening to make that control require precision while you're driving.
On a bumpy road.
It's just patently ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, it might work in a boardroom where you're showing off to the upper echelons of your company how cool this new feature is.
Or some stationary buck where you have all the system set up and everything.
But it certainly it makes no sense when you're driving. So I do have opinions about this.
My favorite one is on the right side of the wheel. You have the little 4-way controller, and one of the main things I use steering wheel controls for personally is like forward and back on, select the next track, and maybe you're listening to a playlist or whatever. That doesn't have those buttons. You have to use the little 4-way controller to select, like you're playing Game Boy or something. Just aging myself, I suppose. On the center screen, you have to pan over to the next button, somewhere on the screen. And you can select anything you want with that button. So it's just ridiculous to do that while you're driving. But I will say, as far as the interaction as poor and difficult as it might be, the system is extremely capable and does have a lot of features, and it does do a lot of things well, especially in the EV front. The navigation system, a lot of these EVs, you do kind of want to use the built-in navigation system, especially if you're going on a long trip, because they do a good job of showing you chargers, and it's just going to plot all the charging stops for you.
And it knows how much range you have.
Exactly. Right? You don't have to pull up an app and tell the app how much range you're starting with, or your SOC or anything like that. So there are some
state of charge.
Yeah, state of charge. Thank you, Keith. There are some things that it does do well. It's just, you got to kind of fight it a little bit to get there.
It's interesting that you bring this up, because for years, the only navigation systems you could get were either, the built-in, what we call native systems, or like you'd buy a separate garment, like you'd stick to your windshield. And it was like, that was the best you could do. And then we've got Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. And one of the actually pretty smart things that the senior director, Jake Fisher, said is, car companies aren't tech companies, and tech companies are car companies. So the car companies would be wise to let the tech companies do something like this. So we're like, forget about the native systems, use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. And now we're going back.
Tesla would like to have a word with you.
To kind of support what you're saying here about, no, use the built-in system now.
Right.
For all these features, it's interesting. We actually bought a pretty basic model. We basically just got all-wheel drive and a couple of weird paint options because they were on the car that was available. And we still ended up spending over $80,000. Just over $80,000.
It's a lot of money.
Oh, I know. I mean, this is even for an EV. This is a lot of money. Alex, what are the features that you get when you buy this car,
and what you don't get?
Right. I mean, so aside from the paint, we also had to pay extra for a heated steering wheel, which
That wasn't a request.
Totally
it was
a luxury.
Installed. It wasn't
installed.
someone wanted it.
Of course, yeah, but it's just a
like
luxury
it, but,
feature that, you know, at $80,000, you think, oh, I really
should be
I have to
included.
tack that on. Extra.
Yeah.
But more importantly, and probably more frustrating for more people, would be the fact that you don't get ACC or adaptive cruise control with the base trim that we got. You have to step up to a different trim level to get that, so that was kind of surprising.
Surprising is a nice way of saying it's absurd.
Yeah. And lane centering too, right?
Yeah, lane centering as well. So it does have LK, like it'll beep and give you some assistance, you know, as you're kind of encroaching the lane line, but it doesn't do any lane following for you, right?
Which you can get in like a $30,000 Hyundai or
I
Honda
think
or
all of our
Toyota.
test Hyundais and Kias have them. Yep.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and some other things that you can get that we didn't get, actually going quickly back to the controls, we didn't get the hyperscreen, as we said. And personally, I think that's the way to get any of these EQ cars. We have 4 of them now, so I can be pretty confident in saying that if you're interested in one, I would suggest avoiding the hyperscreen. But the problem with the EQE is it does not have a head-up display. And the reason that's the problem, at least for me, is because of the driving position. We alluded to that before. The screen that they put behind the steering wheel is probably half the size of the laptop in front of me, and it's really, really high. So for me, at least where I like to put the wheel, it completely blocks the screen, including the speedometer, which is pretty
How
alarming.
fast you were going?
Kind of
I have
important.
no idea.
So, and the reason I mentioned the HUD is because, like in the EQS or the EQS SUV, they have the HUD, and so I can kind of get around that, right?
Right.
By lowering I can put the wheel when I want, and then I can just look at the head-up display to see my speed.
But something as fundamental as knowing your speed, and you need a workaround to do that.
Yep.
Again, it's kind of absurd, and
Right.
I mean, just to kind of trailer on to what Alex is saying about the driving position, I found it very compromising. Just the physical attributes of the car. The dash is pretty high. The A-pillars are pretty thick. The front glass is relatively small, and
The rear glass is really small too.
Exactly, and I sat in it before this podcast just to make sure that I knew what I was talking about, and I realized that if I adjust the seat to where I'm comfortable, I actually can't see the end of the hood. And this is not a huge pickup truck. I mean, this isn't an enormous SUV where we have visibility issues just from the sheer size of these vehicles. And I thought, this is supposed to be kind of a friendly sedan.
Yeah, right.
And it's very compromised.
Yeah.
It's very beautiful inside. I mean, the fit and finish is excellent.
Yeah,
you get in
gorgeous.
the car and it's really impressive. But it's funny, right now we have it parked out next to our Ioniq 6. And it's just funny even looking at it. You know, Mercedes, they put that kind of like the badge above the 3-pointed star. They put the old-fashioned Mercedes logo above it, which kind of felt like an AutoZone kind of thing where you go and you stick on the extra. I said, that's stock. And you look at even the silhouette of it and you look at, it's got this kind of, you know, soap bar cockroach cheek sort of thing, this sort of cab forward. And then you look at what Hyundai did with the Ioniq 6 and it's the same shape.
Same idea.
And like it looks like Mercedes copied their homework and like got it wrong.
Yeah.
Like I know that didn't
Missed
happen.
a few details.
Yeah, it's just like and you sit in the Ioniq 6 and it's also very nice and it costs a lot less money.
Yep,
and
half.
it comes with those features and it just has that kind of, it has a unique, sleek look to it. It doesn't have this kind of odd sort of
Right.
you
Like a
know,
bubble.
Yeah. It's just funny to see someone doing it better and you know, literally park next door. What's it like to drive? I mean, I noticed some differences between it and the EQS, and like one of the nice things about the EQS is that nice, smooth ride.
Yeah.
And not necessarily the case here.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I think it drives a little bit better than the EQS, just by virtue of it being smaller, right?
Yeah.
A little bit tighter of a wheelbase. Doesn't weigh that much less, but a little bit. It's shorter overall. Now, we didn't get the rear steer option that you can get on the EQE. We do have it on our EQS, and that means the rear wheels at slower speeds, kind of driving around town, they're going to steer in the opposite direction as the front, and that makes the car rotate and kind of like yaw about the CG really, really quickly, especially for a giant car like the EQS. So this one does not have that, so it feels a little bit more conventional, if you will. But since it is a little smaller, I didn't really miss it. I mean, those systems are nice for making the wheelbase shorter, and it makes the car kind of have a tighter turning circle.
Helping with parking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it makes it feel like a smaller car. And this doesn't really need, even it's a heavy car, it's like it's a normal size sedan.
Yeah, it's more normal sized. So I didn't really miss that, but I don't know. It's not really a driver's car, if you will. And a lot of Mercedes, they haven't really been that way. They have had some of those in the past for sure. But and for me, the thing that really kills it for me is the brake pedal. And I know we've said this about the other EQ fill in the blank cars. It doesn't give you much confidence, and you're trying to slow down a 5,400 pound vehicle. There is this delay is what I noticed when I initially press the pedal. There's some delay before you actually get a response, and then it just doesn't feel very confidence inspiring under your foot as you're trying to slow down.
You have to put in your request early.
You really do. And then you say, okay, well, it has one pedal driving. I could maybe just use that more often so that I don't have to interact with the brake pedal. But the thing is when you do that, ultimately there are times where you still need to give it some more. And then the brake pedal starts moving away from you. That's one thing that these EQ cars do, is when you put it in one pedal mode, you let off the accelerator and the brake pedal starts moving away.
I literally have a recurring nightmare about that.
Wow.
That my windshield is getting smaller and smaller and the brake pedal is moving away.
Not
and I'm
good
speeding
for
out of control.
claustrophobia, maybe.
Yeah, no, it's not good.
Yeah, so then you reach for it. It's not where you thought it would be. And then it has this very wooden kind of it looks like, or like you're pressing on a brick or something that's kind of down there. So I don't know, that it feels like a small thing or sounds like a small thing, but
no, I think
you use it every time you drive.
I think it's a big thing. I mean, the most elemental aspects of cars is stopping and going, and we're like redefining how we're bringing a car to a halt. I mean, again, this isn't connecting to the internet or the hyperscreen.
It's not flying,
right?
Yeah,
we're not like in the Starship Enterprise or anything. But to have an issue like getting comfortable with how the car brakes is kind of unnerving.
Yeah.
But as we talked about in our pre-production meeting, there are reasons why you might not select a car to drive. In other words, for every car that we test at Consumer Reports, we bring it up to 2,000 miles before we do any of our instrumented testing it and whatnot. But after we're done testing, we published all the results. Literally at the end of the day, we're walking out to go home, and there's this wall of keys. And you can choose which vehicle you might want to drive home that night.
and that helps us get some more information about what it's like to live with a darn thing.
But what is unique in our situation is we have a choice. And I think with you, Alex, you could choose the EQE or any of these Mercedes models and say, I don't want to deal with the weird brakes.
Yeah,
and for me, I don't want to deal with the funky controls. And so when it comes to not having to drive a car for our jobs, but just to get home, we'll choose something else.
Yeah.
And this is an $80,000 car that isn't necessarily desirable, and that's a problem, I think.
It's really funny because if you asked anyone, would you, hey, there's an $80,000 brand new Mercedes waiting outside, you want to take it home?
Oh, sure.
And we're getting into, Honda HR-V, or, we're getting into...
Sometimes simplicity is kind of nice.
Yeah, sure. And these cars just kind of sit sometimes.
Well, what I liked, Alex, is when we were talking about the car's price and your response to how much it costs.
Oh, what did I say?
You said you can buy 2 Ioniq 5s for this, which in my opinion is a much nicer car to drive. The controls are easier, the visibility is better, and it's just, again, I don't want to have to think too hard with the cars that we drive.
And even with the Ioniq 5, some of the, touching on some of the EV specific things, in terms of range and charging, they're kind of better with the Ioniq 5, which costs half as much. I mean, so our car, the EQE with all-wheel drive, is rated for 260 miles. That's the EPA rating. I mean, personally, I've been seeing a little bit more than that. I mean, the car definitely tells you it can go further than that, but with some of these range predictions that they're a little optimistic sometimes. But even with that in mind, I've been getting a little bit better than that, and better than the efficiency rating that the EPA gives it as well. But also, as far as the Ioniq 5, this car only has 288 horsepower, which I'd say which it's modest by EV standards. I'll put it that way, right?
Yeah.
How much it weighs.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
right. And you get 320 with the Ioniq 5.
Right.
So it's just, and it charges faster, 235 kilowatts as opposed to 170. And both of those are great, don't get me wrong. But it's just, when you look at these cars on paper and then you drive them, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe I could get 2 Ioniq 5s.
It's funny. I don't think if you asked 5 years ago whether we'd be comparing in the same breath, not a Genesis, a Hyundai and a Mercedes, and saying, and not trying to be contrarian and, trying to make a hot take or something rather. I'm very curious as to see who's gonna purchase.
Yeah. I mean, the EV thing kind of, it levels the playing field in a weird way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think a lot of what distinguished Mercedes in years past about these kind of large, stately, quiet, solid feeling vehicles with, a lot of that comes with the territory with an EV.
Yes,
and all of the work
and
that they had to.
And it is those things. It does ride well. It is super quiet, comfortable. It does do those things.
But so can most other EVs by virtue of how they're designed. So you've kind of spent all this money and all this time making, I think of like Kodak making, the crispest film possible, and then digital cameras come along, and it's what do we do? So I don't know, and I mean, who knows? But it just feels a little. It feels like it's going to be interesting to find out. We're going to have a full review of this vehicle up on cr.org when we're done with it. It's in test right now. We already have the EQS. You can read all about that. So if you want to read a lot about the new generation of Mercedes and its divergent paths, just head over to cr.org. We are going to continue talking about electric cars with our question. It's from Gervasio from Delaware, and you too can be like Gervasio and send us a question. You can send us a video question if you want, or you can text us, email us to talkingcars@icloud.com. Gervasio asks, why are EV mileage ratings not standardized? EV window stickers give the ratings as both MPGe, miles per gallon equivalent, and kilowatt hours per 100 miles, but in the instrument panel, it displays miles per kilowatt hour. And if you want to compare foreign cars, you have to convert to kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So what's the best way of thinking about this in terms of my everyday driving? And, to be honest, it's funny. I was writing a story about EVs and comparing them to gas-powered and hybrid vehicles and how efficient they are. And our articles go through a decent amount of editing here. And every editor who got to this article said, wait a minute. And these are not cars people. These are people like, magazine editors. And they're saying, oh, wait, how are you measuring this? What's the equivalent of miles per gallon? And they were like dumbfounded that there are 3 ways you can look at it. And none of them make intuitive sense to the average driver. Like,
it's confusing.
Yeah, and I guess in
it's a great question.
In countries that use metric like liters per 100 kilometer and think, you're already looking at it in terms of energy consumed per distance as opposed to distance per energy like we do here. Yeah, but now I hear like hours. Like, Alex, use your, we need an engineer help.
Sure.
You have 2 engineers here. Help,
do
please.
My best.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, they are all equivalents of each other, right? You can convert back and forth, and miles per gallon equivalent is trying to basically use the amount of energy in a gallon of gas and equate that to a kilowatt hour, which is a unit of energy for electrical energy, right? We use that to talk about the amount of energy in a battery in one of these EVs. And I think the way I look at it anyway is MPGe kind of came about as a way to start thinking about plug-in hybrids and electric vehicles when they were really new, and they are still new. But I believe the EPA even did like a focus group and found exactly like what you're talking about, Keith, is that people were really confused by kilowatt hours and kilowatts and kW and all these things. And they preferred miles per gallon equivalent. It just made more sense, right? So I kind of view that as a way to help you during the shopping process. If you're coming from a gas-powered vehicle, you say, okay, this is it allows me to compare them more directly. But when you're actually out driving, you've already made the purchase to an EV or something, right? And you're out driving kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers or even 100 miles, or what I prefer is miles per kilowatt hour. That's more useful because you can say, okay, I'm going to charge for this long and I'm going to get this many kilowatts and I know roughly how efficient my vehicle is, I can go this far, right? So I think that's more useful. And kilowatts per hour or kilowatt hours per kilometer or miles is just a reciprocal of miles per kilowatt hour. So you can just kind of go back and forth. But I think miles per kilowatt hour is a little more useful, at least here in the US, because it sounds kind of like miles per gallon. It's easier to think of it that way, I think, to what your point before.
The problem is with it is when you're looking at it though, and I think just to kind of take a step back, what's interesting is I think people think, oh, electric cars, they're efficient, but
not always.
Different electric cars use different amounts of energy to go the same distance. So if you're comparing a Nissan Leaf and the GMC Hummer EV, the Hummer EV is using a lot more energy to go the same distance as a Nissan Leaf. And that's going to be something that's important to look at going forward as we're looking at, they're all more efficient than gas-powered cars.
Yeah.
But when you really get down to it, there are some differences. But I mean, when I'm looking at it, the issue for me is that there are lots of like fractions and decimals and things.
Yeah.
And, my electricity is, 20 something cents per kilowatt hour because we're here in Connecticut. And, and then I have to think, oh, okay, well, it gets, point so many miles per this and then multiply it by point that. And it's like fourth grade math, not first grade math. It's not, it's just a little, to do in your head. You look at, when you buy a gas powered car, you look at the window sticker, you look at a gas station and you can kind of figure out, okay, $3 a gallon, 30 miles a gallon. That's how much it's going to cost to fill up.
Right.
But
yeah,
with
it is different.
It's different. And at public charging stations, it's different too. Is this just kind of like, are we going to have to learn this? Are people getting this?
I don't think people are going to get this. I don't think most people, listen, the earliest, EV adapters are probably very technically proficient. That they're dialed into this. They're true believers, and they are helping to drive the market toward more people getting EVs, which is fine. But the average person wants simplicity. And it's complicated to have to try to do these calculations. And EV owners are going to be looking constantly at, the distance to empty or state of charge or whatever. How many miles do I have left? But then you have to complicate that, not even with doing the math, but as we've talked about many times, the inconsistency of EV charging stations in the country. So, not only can I find a charger near me, if I get there, is it going to be a line of people? If I have an open charger, is it going to work?
Certainly.
So it's adding complications on the complications. And I think people generally want to know, how many miles can this EV go and how long is it going to take to charge? And that's kind of it. But in this discussion, it just reminded me many years ago, there was a, national hamburger chain that wanted to bring out a hamburger that was bigger than the quarter pounder. And so it was called the 1/3 pounder.
Oh boy.
But most people, again, this is kind of urban legend, but most people thought, well, 1/3, that's a 3 is less
Smaller
than the
than
4.
Yeah.
So it's a smaller hamburger. And it failed. They couldn't get any traction with this hamburger. So
can we get a car that keeps the hot side hot and the cool side cool?
Well, right.
Okay.
But I know this is a big leap here, but if people don't know the difference between a 1/3 pound and a quarter pound, then how are they going to do all this math?
It's familiarity too.
Yeah,
So I'm looking now at the window sticker for the EQE and it gets 86 miles per gallon equivalent. Okay, that kind of makes sense to me. That's like way more efficient than most mid-sized sedans compared to gasoline.
Yes,
but that's calculated based on 15,000 miles per year and all kinds of, and then it says 39 kilowatt hours per 100 miles.
Right.
And
that's where I think the trouble lies, is that figure right there. I think that is less intuitive than thinking about miles per kilowatt hour, right? Because you go up to a charger, you use one of these chargers and it's going to say, it put 10 kilowatt hour or 10 kilowatts into your vehicle, right? And then you can you have an idea of how far you can go based on, I don't know, if your car gets 3 miles per kilowatt.
Yeah.
You have an idea. I think that's more convenient personally.
Or how much it's going to cost you when you charge it at home versus if you charge it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. So I guess we're going to have national math lessons, I guess, as we have.
Yeah, and actually on these EQEs, you can't change it. A lot of the cars, we're noticing you can switch it to whichever one you like. So if you want miles per kilowatt hour or kilowatt hours per 100 miles or even a mile, you can make that change. You can't in these Mercedes, so you're stuck with the kilowatt hours per mile.
Well, you know, I'm going to measure mine in hogsheads, so we'll find out. Cool. So if you have any more questions for us, I mean, don't ask Alex if he can convert miles per gallon to. I mean, he can, but
I don't want to.
No, he doesn't want
Alex
to. Yeah.
is explaining this whole thing, and I was like, "Hey, Keith, do you think this is going to be in the test?"
Yeah, for me, this is. I'm going to have that nightmare again tonight. Except it's going to be I'm on my way to AP calculus. And
so one gallon of gas is equivalent to 33.7 kilowatt hours. So you can think about that. You remember that number.
I will think about that my whole drive home. Excellent. Well, if you have questions, if you want us to do conversions for you, send it to.
Don't send it to us.
Don't send it to. Do not send it to me. That's for sure. I have everyone check my math. Send it to talkingcars@icloud.com. That's all the time we have. But thanks for joining us, and we'll talk cars again soon.